Hi there, this is Alyssa Prettyman for Alyssa Yoga. I have had a bunch of people lately ask me about what I do for back pain because in my bio for pretty much every studio that I teach at, I let people know that I came to yoga because I injured my low back in 2004. And so much of my practice is centered around sort of 14 years of self-discovery research, working with PTs and doctors and yoga people and trying to figure out how can I alleviate my own pain. So here are some yoga poses that work for me in this first video, and then the second video that follows this will be some ball rolling techniques that I use in combination with yoga to find relief. So if your back is in active pain, what I love to start with is just a cat-cow pose. Inhaling to drop the belly, lift your head. Exhaling to round and arch your spine to the ceiling. Now, when my low back goes out, overarching doesn't feel super good. Neither does overarching in the other direction. So just kind of use this as a self-assessment tool. What is my range of motion and what direction doesn't feel as good? Because this can guide you in the postures that follow. After you cat-cow, for about 1 minute to 2 minutes, you're also kind of warming and lubricating the tissues. You can tuck your toes, push your hips back, and come into a downward facing dog. Now, when my back hurts, I like to make this look exactly like a dog does when they do the pose. They really bend the knees, they really arch their butt up towards the sky, let your heels peel away from the floor, and just reinforce the lumbar spine. You could do that for about 5 to 6 breaths and then come back to your knees. You could do a couple more cat-cows and just see how things are feeling after that. Then I like to target the hips. So stepping 1 foot forward, use your hands to frame the front foot. I got some yoga balls behind me there, I'm kicking out of the way. I like blocks under the hands here too, especially if you feel really crunchy in the low back here. You're going to want to get a block under each hand. You can also use books for this if you have a couple old school encyclopedias or something. But then I'll just kind of gently rock the hips low, lift the chest, and bring the front leg to straight or straight-ish. It's going to depend on how your legs are built. When I sink low, I just want to kind of open the hip flexors. When I stretch back, I want to feel it in my hamstrings, maybe in the glutes a little bit. I was in a training class recently that said the hips are really bad neighbors. They refer pain up to the back and down to the knees when they're unhappy. So you just kind of want to warm up the hips. And you'll do this a few times on each side, switching after about 1 minute or 2. Find your runner's lunge. Inhale and exhale, straighten the front leg. And if this is really painful, if you're in super active pain, you might not even get here. This might be a 2nd or 3rd day type of thing. But know that working the hips is part of my personal regimen. Okay, so after you've done that, you can come down onto the floor and try a couple other things. I like to stretch the hips. For some of us, it's going to make sense to do a figure 4. Your shirt straight on. I'm sitting up in this figure 4. I have my hands behind me, and I'm trying to lengthen up through the spine. If this is too intense, I could always move that bottom leg further out. You can do this on the floor as well, interlacing the hands behind this. In this case, it's my right knee, because my left ankle is crossed over the right knee. And I can just lie down and breathe here for about 1 minute. You might do this on both sides. And send the breath low and wide into the torso. You really want to move your pelvic floor with your breathing. If you don't get enough of a stretch out of that version, you can always come into half pigeon facing the floor. If you have knee issues, this one usually isn't right for you. But if you don't, this is a little bit more passive for the upper half of the body. And you can just kind of sink down and let the weight and the shape do the work. I like to put my palms on the floor and push the hips back just a little bit so that I take strain away from the knee and I really get a nice juicy glute stretch. When you're good with that, again, probably about a minute, per side. You can come and try bridge or supported bridge. You'll lie down on your back, knees bent, feet flat, lift the hips, and you can hold for 5 solid breaths. And then come on back down. What I like to do, especially if I'm in active low back pain, is just tuck a block. You can also use pillows, a rolled up blanket, a towel underneath your hips, and just hang out here for 3 to 5 minutes. If you're watching TV, maybe do it during the commercials and just let your low back decompress, let your hip flexors lengthen. And this is one of the first exercises that my physical therapist gave me when my back first went out back in 2004. This and half pigeon were 2 of the main ones that they constantly recommended for low back pain, and I do find relief with it. And then, if all that feels groovy, you can try gentle twisting. And I will say gentle more than once, gentle, gentle. I like to sit up on a nice tall block because it helps me get my spine longer, and it prevents all that rounding in the low back. So you want to be able to tip forward a little bit onto the front of your sits bones, the front of those bony nubbins underneath you. And then just take a gentle twist. You're going to inhale, try to make sure you're sitting super tall. And exhale, pull your belly in and rotate. If you want to include the neck, you can look over the back shoulder, but you don't have to. After about 5 to 7 breaths or a minute on one side, you can move to the other. If this doesn't feel comfortable sitting, try it in a chair. Sit side saddle to the chair, just hold onto the back of the chair and gently help yourself rotate in one direction. And then release and come back to center. You might try it 5 breaths on each side and do that 3 or 4 times. Just see if you can get some squeezing and releasing of the musculature that surrounds your spinal column. That can help move fluid and hydrate kind of the whole system, including the discs in the spine. When you feel stronger and maybe pain isn't quite as great, plank, reverse table, and reverse plank are great kind of maintenance poses to sustain a strong and healthy spine. So we all know our plank pose, right? Our high push-up. See if you can just hold it for about a minute, maybe, let's see, 12 breaths if you breathe nice and slow. Just watch that your neck doesn't drop, your head doesn't drop forward of the shoulders. See if you can lift up through the back of the head. Make sure the hips don't drop down. Try to keep a nice line between the back of your head, the back of your heart, and the back of your hips. And if that feels like it's not sustainable, do it on your knees, okay? And so that's your plank. Try to do that 3 times a day for a minute a day, if you can. Reverse plank or reverse table. So reverse table I love, knees bent. You just try to make a straight line. Again, shoulders, hips, and knees. You can let your chin go back a little bit. I don't like to get super crunchy on the back of the neck and really collapsy, so I'll just hold my head up a little bit, strengthen the muscles of the neck, hold my head in a neutral position. If you want to do reverse plank, it's a little bit more challenging. Legs straight, push the floor away, lift hips, but you strengthen the musculature of the back line and teach it how to hold your spine in a neutral position. And that is a series of yoga poses that I'll do when my back goes out. Again, assess your pain in cat-cow and then try the different ones. Avoid the ones that give you pain when you're in active pain. Move towards them when the pain has subsided a little bit. So those are the yoga poses. Video 1.